Hi, my name is Joe, and my friends in the RPG community have tricked me into making these videos about how to write an adventure. Today, I'm going to answer some questions that I've gotten from the community, from Discord folks and Blue Sky folks, I think. So let's just jump into those. Bread Wizard asks, what is your process for laying out maps and point crawls? I always suffer from blank page block, even if I've got some locations already in mind. So when I'm doing a map, I tend to start trying to create something that it looks like realistic geography. And then I put the adventure stuff in afterward, wherever it physically would make sense. So, for example, I might start with the mountains. The mountains would probably be in the center of the land. And then I have streams that come down. They collect into rivers that come down and go out to the sea. And then I would probably put my swamps and forests close to the river, and then have plains, grasslands, and then deserts farther out. And then I would just put my adventure stuff wherever it seems to make sense on that map. Of course, you've seen my other videos. You know, I also like real resources. I might just go scanning through images, real maps of the real world, or satellite photography, and just grab a cool looking image of the real world and use that as my map and, trace over it and what have you. Um, I would advise that when you're putting your adventure stuff in, to spread it out somewhat evenly. Don't put all your evil temples on one mountain. So your ventures, when you're writing your adventure, your players can find stuff all over the place. It should be valuable and worthwhile for them to go explore your world if you're doing sort of an open world sandbox situation. And if you're inventing these as original adventure locations, or if you're inserting published adventure sites on your map, either way, just try to make sure there's something interesting in all of the areas where your players seem interested in going. Eel Dip asks, how do I avoid scope creep? So scope creep is when you start with a simple plan, but then you keep getting more ideas and you keep adding more stuff and it keeps growing out of control. It's creeping. Uh, so I mentioned this concept a bit in my other videos, but in general, I'm trying to stick to some kind of narrow focus or vision that I set for the adventure when I started writing it. And if I'm getting more cool ideas, I try to put those aside and put them into the next adventure, maybe a sequel or the adventure location next door to my current adventure location. There's always going to be more adventures, more games, so there's no need to try to cram everything into what's happening right here. Elo Guyan asks, what is your experience with writing, reviewing, or playtesting one-page dungeons? I use them almost exclusively for my West Marches style campaign, but find little love for them from the community as a whole. I personally have written a bunch of short dungeons, usually 2 to 3 pages, but probably with some creative formatting, you could get them down to one page. I think they're fun to run and fun to write, and I've gotten lots of positive feedback from folks who have run them in their own games. Short dungeons are great for cons and one shots. You might want to use them for introducing new players to your system. They're also great for in a big campaign when you want to just break things up and you want to sprinkle little things to do in between your big adventure sites. Absolutely, they're very useful in a campaign setting, in a big adventure. My only caveat about this subject is I don't like the idea of setting an arbitrary limit for a writing project or an adventure, such as a one-page dungeon. I would never set out to just write a one-page dungeon. I would say I want to write a short one, and we'll see, how long it ends up being. Limits can be very helpful or interesting as a creative writing exercise, just to see what can I cram into one page, what can I fit into a single adventure site. Sure, that's interesting. It gets the creative juices flowing. But I don't think there's anything virtuous about saying this is a one-page dungeon. It should be however many pages it needs to be a good dungeon. Um, that would be my advice: is to focus on things that are good and useful and effective and fun to play, versus being a particular label. But sure, short dungeons and one-shot content is great in lots of contexts. Hodag RPG, personal friend, friend, colleague, uh, talented artist who worked on one of my books, The Undying Sea, asks, how do you feel about tables? What are their pros and cons, and how often should you use them? We mentioned tables in one of the prior videos, and I know that random tables can be the lifeblood of old school gaming, and I've read countless tables, I've written countless tables. They're very useful tools. However, I personally don't love to run a game based on randomized word salad at the table. When I'm writing a table for an adventure, as I said before, I try to make it specific and relevant to the events that are going on in that adventure or at that location. And by specific, I mean I want a table entry to say something like Johnny, the butcher's assistant, stumbles out of the shadows, weeping blood and waving a rusty cleaver. Very evocative, very specific. I do not want, for my random tables, local tradesmen, corrupted, dangerous. We've all seen tables that can generate things like that. A specific item is very easy for a GM to interpret and run at the table. They can just read the words and go. A series of random words means you need to stop and think and try to imagine how it works together, and then what you're going to say and how you're going to describe it. And then you're going to get questions and you don't have answers yet because you haven't thought that far ahead. That seems like more work. And I always want the GMs that I'm writing for to have more fun and less work. By relevant, I want a table entry to give me people, creatures, events, objects that are tied to this setting, to this adventure, that are relevant to my players' current, concerns with the adventure. I don't want random word salad about D6 jubilant foreign bandits, and then I need to figure out what that means and where they came from and what they're doing there. And that's just more work for the GM, I feel. And I try to avoid doing GM work. I want to have fun at the table, and I want my GMs who are running my events to be having fun too. And lastly, I don't want to give my players filler activities or distractions. Um, if they're working on an investigation, they're trying to find a murderer. I don't want to say, "Oh, some goblins fell out of the ceiling. Deal with that now." If they're very focused on the activity that's in front of them, the quest that they're doing, they may get distracted thinking, oh, this must be a part of the adventure. And they get distracted and they go looking for it and they realize it's a dead end. I feel that's frustrating and it feels like kind of a waste of time. Um, I want them to feel rewarded by every step they take forward, by whatever it is they're investigating or interacting with. So I want all of those events, those random things that come out of a table, to be tied into the adventure in some way, so they feel rewarded by taking the effort to think about it and pursue it, and take action. James Words asks, for a small adventure, 2 pages, how much stuff do you start with? Do you limit how many ideas you include? So we touched on this idea a little bit in the other videos, but let's talk about it again. For a small adventure, I think you only need one story idea, one hook, one plot moment, and then half a dozen relevant locations or rooms. So, for example, if the idea or the plot hook is Bandit Alex hid in the old tomb and accidentally woke up the undead snake priest. One sentence. So now I have Alex, I have a snake priest, I probably have some snakes or snake monsters. Alex may have a bandit buddy. Maybe there's a sheriff looking for the bandits. There could be a snake trap. There's whatever Alex stole, and maybe there's a snake treasure. That's a ton of stuff. You don't need any more than that. One central solid idea should spin out lots of relevant elements. And by the time you get up to somewhere around 10, that should be plenty for at least a one-shot adventure, for a couple hours of fun at least. And again, if you find yourself spinning off too many ideas, that you need extra hands, you need a third hand, just pick the best ones. Pick the 2 best NPCs, the 2 best monsters, the 2 best traps. That should be plenty. Uh, it's always surprising to me because I used to be guilty of creating way too much content, thinking, oh, I need all of these pages of notes to get through one night. And then, of course, you find you only go through one paragraph of notes in an actual 4 hours of gaming. Um, so your mileage may vary, but I encourage you to keep things short and sweet. Just take the best, most interesting things and don't worry about the rest. Axiom asks, I have tons of locations, NPCs, plot hooks, enemies, etc. I can connect them well like pieces of a puzzle, but when I edit them all together, they just look like a disjointed mishmash. How do you avoid this? So I assume you're meaning it looks disjointed as a document. You say you can connect all your elements well conceptually. So I would suggest that you break up all the pieces of your adventure logically, usually by location. So put the NPCs and the creatures and objects in their appropriate locations with their appropriate location text, and whatever notes go with each one, and then that's it. So you should not make millions of notes throughout the whole document for every location that connects everything to everything. You'll never keep track of it all. It'll just be distracting and confusing. Um, it's more work. You should only put what you need in each location. So if there's one location where there's just a farmer and that farmer just knows one clue about the big mystery, that's all you need to write under the farmer. You don't need to say what all of the relationships are or knock on if effects might be. If the players go to the farmhouse, they're going to meet the farmer and they're going to get the one clue. Easy. That's it. Um, in addition, you might create for yourself a reference sheet, like a one single sheet that bullets out what the mystery is, what all the plot points are. Maybe if there are 10 clues, just where the clues are, and that can be its own thing off to the side. But then when you write your locations, each one only has one clue available, and that's what the players are going to find there. So that's how I would break up that information and keep it looking neat and clean as a document. Gengers asks, how do you adapt for PC's individual motivations and goals? So the short answer is I don't. Um, my job as the GM is to play an entire world, and my players' jobs are just to play their one characters. So I'm just not going to help them do their job. Um, the longer answer is I run games that I want to run. So either I write an adventure or I buy one that I'm excited about, and I tell my players that I want to run this adventure, and I try to get them excited for it. I try to drum up some interest, but it's up to them whether or not they want to play that adventure. Um, what I don't do is survey my players and ask each of them what they want to be and what they each want to do, and then go create a whole world full of factions and NPCs and subplots for them to interact with and discover and feel catered to. Um, Generally speaking, running the game is a lot more work and time and effort and even money than playing the game. And lots of people have said that, and I think that's pretty common knowledge at this point. In general, GMs just do a lot of work outside of playing the game. And that can be fun, that can be its own reward, but it is also time and effort and work. I personally have seen a lot of GMs do an enormous amount of prep work, surveying their individual players' desires, designing whole worlds and mythologies and backstories, creating maps, printing minis, uh, building websites and other tools. All of this prep, tons and tons, hundreds of hours maybe, all to set up for a game that then the players, after a couple of sessions, don't even show up to. They didn't invest anything, so what do they care? Um, which is terrible, which is really frustrating. So I don't do that. I don't get engaged with that. Uh, I want to focus most of my time at the table and have fun at the table. So I grab an adventure or I write an adventure that's going to be fun for me to run, and hopefully it'll be fun for my regular players. Or sometimes I go out to one of the forums or the Discord servers, and I say, look, I want to run this adventure. If you want to play in it, contact me and we'll play. But I don't do a ton of work trying to cater to the players to keep them interested and make them feel fulfilled because they wrote a backstory, and now I have to cater to that. I think that's a strange imbalance between friends who are playing a game at a table. Everyone should show up and play themselves. They should play whatever their stuff is. They shouldn't be expecting other people to play for them or to cater to their play. I think we're all responsible for our own fun, and we should all show up and try to have fun and not put the onus on someone else, the burden on someone else to give us fun. And that's just how I feel. Cats Have No Lord asks, what steps do you take after the first draft to really make it shine? How do you elevate the work? And some folks like to write a really dazzling first draft, and then they use the editing process to chop it down and try to make dazzling into useful. I do the opposite. I try to make a useful first draft. It's functional and all the plot points work. And then I try to use the editing process to punch things up and make it more dazzling if I can. And sometimes that just means I get out the thesaurus and I change the word red to crimson. Sometimes it means I go looking for white space on my layout to see where there's a space where art can fit. Sometimes it means I just see if there's a list of items and see if I can make it a little longer and more interesting and more flavorful. So if there's a corpse and I just said there was a key in his pocket because that's important to the adventure, Maybe I add something else in addition to the key. Maybe now he also has some glass marbles and some glass figurines and a magnifying glass and a glass eye. That's very weird and memorable, and maybe the players will use those objects and they'll wonder, why was this bandit so obsessed with glass? I don't know. But that zhuzhes things up a bit. It adds detail. It's becomes more memorable and exciting, um, on top of being functional. And that would be my advice: is to make it functional, and then just try to add weird details as much as you can to make it more memorable and unique. Boxman214 asks, how do you give factions or single NPCs interesting goals? How do you set them on a path toward said goals? So when I create NPCs, I'm usually doing that with the definition of what they want among whatever their characteristics are. Everyone wants something, and in order for them to have been classified as NPCs or factions of interest in my game, they must have wants and interests that intersect somehow with the adventure with the players. So that either needs to be very logical or very exciting, unique, special. The bandits should want money, or they should want to steal whatever it is the PCs want. So they're directly at odds. The cult should want to convert more cultists, or they should want to kidnap and sacrifice the PC's favorite patron. So they should be engaged in whatever makes sense for them, and somehow the PCs intersect with that. Or they should come over and intersect with the PCs in some way and interfere with what they're doing. And that way, the PCs should be, they should feel engaged, they're interested, they have a conflict to overcome. And that's the core of really any good gameplay. You have to have conflict. Otherwise, what are you doing? At the start of the game, the NPCs or the faction, they should probably be in the early stages of whatever this plan is. So if they're trying to steal something or recruit someone or hurt someone, they're already planning to do it. They're investigating. They have spies out, whatever it may be. So the PCs the players should have an opportunity to bump into the bad guys, doing those things. They should run into the scout. They should run into a spy. They should bump into someone making a mistake as they're trying to move towards their goal. And that way, the players can say, "Oh, something is happening. We want to investigate. We want to pursue." At the opposite end of the spectrum, the NPCs can just show up their first time and do the evil deed. They can steal the object, they can kill the victim, whatever it is, and then the chase is on, and the good guys can chase the bad guys and try to resolve the conflict that has just blown up in their face. So you sort of have those two options: is they can slowly build towards it, and the PCs can intersect that building action, or we can start at the building action, and then the PCs can pursue after that sort of climactic event. And it looks like that's all the questions I have for now. So good luck out there.